Kim Barnes loves the discovery and surprise of writing and never knows where her essays or novels or their characters are going to take her, or where they might end up. While writing, she has been known to yell up to her husband, Bob Wrigley, "Oh my God, he's going to die." And then report an hour later that the character somehow survived her best efforts to dispatch him. Excuse me. You all know Kim Barnes and her reputation as a great talent and writer of such award-winning works as Into the Wilderness and most recently The Kingdom of Men. But she is also a brilliant teacher, and there is no one more generous than she is. To say that she has a heart of gold is to use a completely insufficient metaphor. Please welcome Kim Barnes.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to Book People and Jennifer Hawk and Brandon and Max and everyone who's taken part in this. Remember that this event is in support of the Hemingway Movable Feast, which raises money for the Hemingway Fellowship and allows our graduates to do things like bartend in a bow tie. Buy your tickets now.
Can I just say that the only reason I wore this is because you requested it?
We extract our price. I'm going to read the first few pages of my novel in progress. I have to tell you guys, I don't know if you realize how terrifying this is for us. We read all over the country, but we trot out our green ponies and we have no idea what's going to happen. There could be a great wreck. And it's scary. And so we're doing this because we want to let our students know that it never changes. It's always terrifying and hard, and we're there with you. This novel is presently titled, I Love You, Hieronymus Bosch. That could change. Time is present day. Setting is an isolated resort called Salvo Hot Springs, which is vacant and up for sale. That could change. Billy, 80, and Stead in his 70s and in the early throes of Alzheimer's are the caretakers and lone residents. And this is set in north central Idaho, by the way. That might change. You'll hear the name Gibb, Billy's dead husband. Annie is Stead's daughter, whom he hasn't seen for 30 years. I don't think that will change. What I'm most certain of is that Caleb is the name of Stead's son, and that when Caleb was 6, Stead made a terrible mistake that cost the boy his life. Chapter 1. Never in all her living days had Billy Olson been so frightened by a man, and Lord knew she had seen men do some terrifying things in her 80 years on this earth. The sight of Stead Vanderveer with his hands in a sink of bloody water, shirt hiked up under his armpits, pants down around his ankles, well, it was enough to scare the tar out of any sensible being. Stead turned, his face blank of recognition, as though they hadn't known each other half a century. He held a dripping knife in one hand, a piece of flesh in the other. He looked down at his privates, which meant that Billy had to look too. Still intact, thank God, and she brought her eyes back to his. What in the world, Stead? She didn't bother to take off her galoshes, but slopped to the old hi-fi and lifted the needle. The opera dropped from a quavering high note into blessed peace. She flapped her hands at his nether parts. What's the matter with you? Don't want my pants to get wet, he said. She wedged her arms beneath her breast, turned her back, heard him mutter the clink of his belt. "Are you decent?" she asked. "You know I never have been." She smiled in spite of herself, felt the rabbity thump of her poor heart slowing. She looked over his shoulder, saw him tucking his shirt. "What did you do?" she asked. "Cut yourself?" He dipped his hands into the bloody water, brought up a venison roast. "Just trying to get this old buck thawed," he said. He scraped at it with a knife. Little freezer burn, never hurt nobody. She eyed the worn seams of his flannel shirt, his drooping bottom, the knee-knocked legs of his canvas pants. He still dressed like the logger he once was, the only thing missing his cocked boots, replaced by a pair of Romeo slippers. She wished Gib were there to help her make sense of this. Stead just wasn't himself anymore. Billy grabbed the broom that leaned behind the door and began sweeping at the wet path she had tracked across the floor of the single space that held the kitchen, the dining table, the living room furniture. She had once felt in competition with Stead when it came to keeping a clean house, but now she noted the dried mud, the dust collecting in the corners, the webs lacing the windows. Lord knew it wasn't easy, the cottonwood leaves blowing in, the pine needles matting the ground, the pollen in spring coating everything yellow, and now the muddy slush. She'd only been a girl when her family left Missouri for Idaho, but she had never gotten used to the snow. She gave the broom an extra push. "I had a wife once." Stead wiped his hands. "Don't need another." Billy straightened. Vivian had been the closest thing she'd ever had to a best friend. She believed it hurt her more than it did Stead when Viv left. One more thing she wasn't sure she could forgive him for, no matter how hard she prayed. "You don't want to let that meat linger," she said. "I don't have time to be hauling you into town if you're full enough to get yourself poisoned." "You ever seen me poisoned?" he said. Billy wanted to say that in the 30 years since Caleb's death, she'd been watching him poison himself with too many cigarettes and too much whiskey, but she knew better. He'd sull up like a possum and not talk for days. Just the two of them on that 40 acres, and she had learned to hold her tongue if she meant to have human company. She replaced the broom, kept her back turned. "I expect we might be seeing Annie pretty soon." When he didn't respond, she waited another few seconds and opened the door, stepped out, and pulled it shut behind her. She wasn't sure she was doing the right thing by calling in what family Stead had left, but it was the only thing she knew to do. She remembered what Viv had said the previous evening as they talked on the phone, that she had walked away from her marriage vows a long time ago and had no intention of revisiting them now. "You know I don't have it in me to look after him," Billy had said. "I'm no spring chicken." "Then put him in the VA," Viv said. "Put him in the snowbank. You know I don't care anymore. He deserves what he gets." Oh, it broke Billy's heart to hear Viv talk that way. "He's the father of your children," she wanted to say. "No matter what, that's something you will always share." "No one deserves to lose his mind," Billy had said. "No one deserves to forget the names of his own kin." There had been a moment's silence. "Has he forgotten my name, Billy?" Billy had closed her eyes and rested her forehead against the wall. She hadn't heard Stead speak his wife's name since Viv had taken Annie and left, not even a note to tell him where they'd gone. "He remembers you," Billy said. "He probably wishes he could forget." In Viv's voice, Billy could hear what was almost regret. "He will forget," Billy said. "I wouldn't count on time." Thank you.